A new poll from Nanos shows that a slight majority of Canadians believe increasing the Canadian deficit will grow the economy. Let's go to Nik Nanos, Chief Data Scientist, founder of Nanos Research Group. Nik, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Is it unusual for Canadians to support deficit spending? You do a lot of these polling situations. I'm wondering about that.
Well, if we're at war, if we're under threat, then they're okay with deficit spending. They're never enthusiastic about deficit spending. You know, the thing is that, you know, the last time we saw that there was an appetite for some deficit spending was actually the pandemic. You know, people were worried about their jobs. They were worried about the future. They were worried about how they're going to pay the bills, and businesses were, you know, under stress. And, you know, the appetite for deficit spending increased then. I guess, Morella, the question is this kind of like the pandemic, right? A new type of wartime scenario where it has to do with trade uncertainty, tariffs, threats to some key sectors like the automotive sector. And I think in this environment, you know, as opposed to regular or normal times, if there is such a thing, people are a little more likely to be okay with deficit spending.
Yeah, and even just a few months ago, a threat to sovereignty, technically from Donald Trump. So a small majority reported here. Are there regional differences?
Yeah, you know, the thing is that if you happen to live in the prairie provinces, you're much more likely to disagree. And, you know, the statement that we tested in the survey for Bloomberg News was, you know, will additional deficit spending grow the economy? And asked Canadians whether they agreed or disagreed. And, you know, the thing is that in the prairie provinces, that level of disagreement jumped from 37% to 47%. So there's much more disagreement among those that live in the prairie provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, when it comes to deficit spending than other parts of the country.
What about by age group? I imagine older Canadians, for example, might support the kind of spending rather than young Canadians who will get left having to pay it back.
Yeah, are you getting a little cynical, Mirella? Like maybe the older folks that won't have to worry about paying for the bill? Sure, have a deficit. Someone else will pay for it. Yeah, you know, the thing is nationally, the proportion of Canadians that agreed or disagreed that additional deficit spending would grow the economy was at 53%. That jumps up to 61% among Canadians that are over 55 years of age. And actually, Canadians that are over 55 years of age are twice as likely to agree to one extent or another than to disagree with this extra deficit spending. The kicker is ask younger people, and why don't we just put in parentheses those that will be paying for this eventually, they're actually evenly split. It's not even a majority. About 4 out of every 10 are okay with the deficit spending or think that it'll grow the economy, and about 4 out of every 10 disagree that the economy will grow as a result of deficit spending. So, Morella, you've got that generational battle shaping up right now where the older folks, okay with deficit spending, think it's a good idea. Younger folks, not so much.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, you also looked at defense spending and NATO targets. What did you find?
Yeah, it's interesting. We tested for the survey with Bloomberg News the approach to NATO spending and how it could be funded. And, you know, there are a lot of different ideas that Canadians have. Among the more popular one was to cut social programs. About 22% of Canadians, I believe, said that we should be funding our new NATO spending or increased NATO spending through the cut of social programs. About 19% said raise taxes. Interesting, when we asked this question before, in June of 2024, there have been changes. The proportion of Canadians that said that they do not want to increase the budget for defense spending has dropped from 26 to 17%. And the appetite to cut social programs is up about 7 percentage points.
Okay, so what's your read on that? Again, is it just the changing times and the threats emanating from the U.S. and generally sort of, I guess, the geopolitical scene dramatically changing?
Yeah, I think a realization for Canadians, they always knew that defense had been, why don't we just say, less funded compared to other priorities for the federal government. And there is an appetite in this poll and in other polls that we've done for Canadians to keep on pace with other NATO allies. So, you know, the appetite for defense spending as something that's necessary has increased. And there are fewer and fewer Canadians today than there was even a year ago that were opposed or that are opposed to increasing the budget for defense. So it's kind of like part of the new reality. And I don't think it just has to do with the United States. I think it has to do with Canadians wanting to make sure that we keep pace with our NATO allies.
Interesting. All right, changing times. Nik Nanos, Chief Data Scientist, founder of Nanos Research Group. Thanks for that.